and you thought your nightmares were scary. You could just see Dustin reading that. It was so scary. Well, John of Patmos, his revelation is definitely a frightening one, all right. This is just a slice of it out of chapter 9, but the whole thing is like a fever dream. It's wacky, it's weird, it's very worrisome. I tend to get a lot of anxiety dreams myself, and it's like one strange thing after another, these odd details that seem to make sense in the dream, but then are super random and out of sync. It's like this dissonance of the strange disconnectedness of one thing and another, like those locusts that look like horses that are equipped for battle with teeth like lions and, hair like women. Scales like breastplates, wings and tails, scorpions and stingers. That's so weird, right? It's the cross between this thing and that, and this over there. It makes you wonder, what was John doing before he had this vision? Of course, now we know that the book of Revelation is actually a coded text. There's a ton of symbolism. All of that meant something, the torturing for 5 months without death. It's all symbolism. And while people love to interpret it about our day and time, whatever day and time you happen to be reading it in, the book was actually written about the Emperor Nero as a criticism of him and the Roman Empire. But it's still pretty scary, right? It's why it nearly didn't end up in our canon. Many people fought against it because it was so indecipherable and the imagery so disturbing. But that was his vision. A nightmare, if you ask me. But you know what's really a nightmare? Imagine driving northwest on Alton towards Culver. You pass St. John Newman, the Roman Catholic Church on your right. Then the big Greek Orthodox Church a few seconds later. And then you pass the Evangelical Church with a constantly changing name on the corner of Creek. And on past the once Irvine Pres, now Shepherd's Grove. Wasn't there something in the middle there? Something that meant something? But now it's just a gray nothing, like a glitch in the matrix. What was in between the Greek Orthodox and the ever-changing Evangelical Church? It's fuzzy. You can't quite remember, but the void feels like a vacuum sucking the air out of your headspace. It's not there. It's just missing. What if there were no Irvine United Congregational Church? A nightmare on Alton Street. Parkway. I don't even know who I'd be. I don't know how I would have coped with my father's death when I was 14. Would I have acted out? Would I hate God? Would I be a faithless Gen Xer with a bad taste in my mouth for religion? Like most Gen Xers. I know this, I wouldn't be a pastor. Absolutely no way. My early exposure to IUCC was just what this adolescent needed to ground myself. A place where I was free to ask questions, to be angry. A supportive landing spot where I could practice public speaking and be affirmed for my thoughts, my personhood. As I began to think about it, I realized I wouldn't even have my family. No Molly, no Micah, because I met my husband on a mission trip with my past church, but I wouldn't have been a pastor, so I wouldn't have ever been in Guatemala that fateful week we crossed paths. What would I be doing with myself? And who would I be doing it with? But it's not just me. There are quite a few of us who wouldn't have the partners we have today if IUCC never existed. No Martha McCartney and Lyle Norton. They never would have crossed paths. David Schofield and Brian Percy Schofield. They met right here at IUCC too. Were this nightmare were to have come true, Dave says he would have been lost. He found IUCC after studying A Course of Miracles, and through his best friends, Michael and David, I suppose they'd still be friends. But would any of them have gotten married? I know it's far-fetched to imagine that we wouldn't have equal marriage, but remember, IUCC was pivotal in the fight for equal marriage. We started fighting for it way back in 2000 with Prop 22. IUCC was a hub for those fighting for same-gender marriage. We lost that first battle by a lot. And yes, we did lose Prop 8 years later, but by that time, it was IUCC that was organizing county-wide. We were phone banking twice a week, partnering with other churches, one of them being my former church at Fairview Community Church. But remember, I wouldn't have been the pastor, so would they have even been a part of that partnership, of that fight? I guess it would have just been the Unitarians. Imagine. There'd be no progressive Christian voice in Irvine. Not much in South County at all. After all, Shepherd of the Hills, Fold, and all the people who came here, you wouldn't have had any place to go. Come to think of it, I don't even know if Fairview would have become a member of the United Church of Christ without IUCC, its big sister. And as we all know, IUCC wasn't just pivotal in fighting for equal marriage. We were the first church in all of Orange County to be open and affirming. We pushed other UCC churches around our conference, beating out First Church Long Beach and Claremont UCC, leading the way for others to follow our courageous first step. Would they have done it without IUCC taking the lead and the heat? I think of all those people who came here in those early days after that vote 32 years ago. It was the middle of the AIDS crisis. There were so many who came to IUCC to die. Their churches had kicked them out. Their families disowned them. All they heard was that God hated them. If IUCC never existed, they would have died alone, thinking everyone abandoned them, even God. Death would be lonelier without this place. Council member Larry Agron said, if IUCC didn't exist, the world would be a different, darker place. He worked with us way back in the late 80s and 90s when we fought against institutionalized discrimination against the LGBT people in our city. He said that IUCC is, quote, the city's foundational pillar and has helped Irvine become a more progressive community. Before the emerging trend to prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion, the Irvine United Congregational Church, purveyors of love, justice, and peace, provided those with a meaningful sense of safety and community. This call for justice extends to our, he wrote there, tireless efforts to confront the current and future crisis of the damage to our climate, the biggest challenge of our time. He says we've been instrumental in facilitating interfaith dialogue. The Irvine United Congregational Church has also been a forward-thinking and thoughtful champion of social justice and civil rights issues. He went on to say that the city of Irvine is grateful and indebted to the Irvine United Congregational Church for its involvement in fostering the beloved community. If, like George Bailey, we walk through our Bedford Falls, we'd notice a different community with so many different implications. If it was this nightmare that we woke up to of non-existence. Where would University Synagogue be if IUCC vanished from existence? As a small fellowship of a few dozen people, we discovered that there was no room at the inn. When we called schools and houses of worship to find a place for us to gather, said our friend, Rabbi Arnie Rockless, not only did IUCC welcome us as tenants, but together we created an interfaith dialogue and a mutual admiration society. IUCC's warm embrace was the modern equivalent of Abraham and Sarah welcoming the three strangers in Genesis chapter 18. You nourished us and nurtured us and allowed us to grow as we welcome strangers to our expanding tent. So when we celebrate Thanksgiving each year, it truly is a service of gratitude for all that you did for us and all that we share. You might even say that just as Judaism, the parent religion, made Christianity possible, IUCC, the parent house of worship, made University Synagogue possible. Wow. Would there be a reconstructionist synagogue in Orange County? Would that fledgling congregation have made it? Or would they just have become disheartened and abandoned the dream of a different kind of synagogue? And you? Where would you be? Would you have just given up on Christianity? No alternative voice, no alternative perspective? What would be missing from your life? Who would be missing from your life? What would it look like if 4915 Alton Parkway was just missing on the map? It's lonely, dark, gray, and lifeless without IUCC in Orange County. That's a nightmare I'd hate to see come to life. So thank God we do exist. And it's just a scary thought. Like George Bailey, we can wake up to the reality that we have made a difference. It's a wonderful life, and we are a part of a wonderful, wonderful church. So now it's up to us to make sure the next generation has a progressive Christian community that fosters a safe space where like minds and hearts can find one another as Christ's among us, caring for the world, starting right here in this sacred space, but not ending here. Here where we foster interfaith dialogue and relationships, working for the rights of everyone in our community, using our voices to speak up and our hands to lift one another up as we embrace the wounded and work for peace. We represent another way, a Christianity that so many are pleasantly surprised exists. We have to ensure it does, so no one will ever wake up to a nightmare on Alton Street Parkway. Amen.